The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
Welcome back. Just a reminder that it's Policy Week at CoinDesk. And joining us now to discuss global policy is Linda Jeng, Chief Global Regulatory Officer at the advocacy group Crypto Council for Innovation. Welcome, Linda. I'm happy to have your global perspective. I also do a lot of global stuff here at CoinDesk, so it's very welcome to sort of put this all in a larger, with a larger picture here. So let's just start. I mean, there's so much happening all over the world. There's, regulatory movements happening in Europe. Asia's kind of heating up again after a while. The U.S. is in a state of, chaos, I guess. But let me just ask your opinion. I mean, where do you see the U.S. fitting into kind of the larger global picture? Do you feel that the U.S. is falling behind? That's been a critique that we've heard quite a lot on the show. Do you feel like the U.S. is catching up? If you could just sort of lay out how you sort of see the big picture here.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. And I want to say it's really an honor to speak at your first policy week. The U.S. unfortunately is lagging behind. If you want broad adoption of crypto, you need rules of the road. And the EU was the first out of the gate. And so if we are going to be leaders in the crypto markets as well as regulation, we have to begin adopting our own rules. And therefore, what happens is currently with the EU already out with their regulation MiCA, you see UK is developing something similar. Australia already has a consultation that just went out along with Singapore. And then Hong Kong is planning on coming out with a consultation of its own this spring. So you can see it's literally a cascade. So whoever is the first mover gets to influence the regulations of the rest of the world.
It's so interesting. I mean, where do you think is going to be the next hub, right? Because we're sort of, that's what's so interesting about crypto is that it's always shifting, right? So Singapore was sort of king for a while, but you just mentioned Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong is super interesting, but there's some debate about how open Hong Kong will really be. Do you see more crypto activity shifting to Asia in the near future?
Well, Hong Kong already signaled that it wants to open up its retail markets to crypto, whereas Singapore is signaling that it wants to close its crypto markets to its retail markets to crypto. So, we're getting mixed signals from different parts of Asia. But what is really interesting about having regulatory frameworks is it gives crypto startups the ability to access the banking infrastructure. And right now, MiCA is allowing European crypto startups to register and therefore get banking accounts. Whereas here in the US, we don't really have rules. And recently we had that joint statement by the banking agencies, essentially warning banks not to bank crypto startups.
That's interesting. You mentioned MiCA, the markets in crypto assets legislation in Europe. That's already been postponed twice, most recently pushed to April. But if it does become law in the EU, maybe you could tell us some of the highlights. You mentioned that it'll make it easier for crypto companies to get bank accounts. What about obtaining insurance and the like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it will be adopted. It's just that in Europe, you have to translate the text into 24 some languages, and that's mostly the hang up, finding the legal experts in those languages to translate. But once it is adopted, they will have until 2024 to choose to register with EU institutions. And then once they register, they have to get insurance as well as bank accounts. But this also gives a green light to EU banks to bank crypto companies.
I just want to follow up with that because the Basel Committee at the same time is limiting banks from holding cryptocurrency as reserves. So how does this conflict with trying to make it more crypto friendly or easier for crypto companies to operate?
Well, one day we will be operating in an economy, a truly digital economy where money is traveling on chain. And so if banks have to pay a capital charge just for holding digital money, then the Basel Committee may have gotten something wrong. So it is an iterative process. The Basel Committee is studying this very carefully, and currently the rules that they have proposed are limited to their direct holdings, and so that doesn't prevent banks from still interacting with crypto companies as custodians.
Now, you're saying the U.S. is going to fall behind the EU and other countries. We're seeing now with the new Congress a new subcommittee that's being formed that's going to look at this, and there's talk that stable coins are going to be the first to be regulated. But you think that this isn't going to be enough, it's too little too late, correct? Is that basically what your overall thesis is here?
I'm not saying it's too late. We still have a chance. If we want to be the leading digital economy in the world, then we need rules of the road, not just for crypto, but also for our private data. Remember, this is going to be a data-driven economy. And so we also need to think about how can we ensure that these technologies will allow us to control our own data and respect our privacy. And these are some of the essential building blocks for a democratic digital economy.
So a former member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, you spent most of your career in Washington. So yesterday we spoke to Congressman Warren Davidson, who had some criticism for U.S. regulators. Let's have a quick listen.
You've got people that are engaging in overt pump and dump scams and getting away with it over the years because the SEC is asleep at the wheel, or in a worst case scenario, co-conspirators to launching things that they themselves say are unregistered securities. So some seem to get a free pass and others seem to get their business models killed. What's the rhyme or reason behind it? And a lot of people say, you know what, I got a business to run, I'm just launching it outside the United States.
All right, the SEC is asleep at the wheel and launch your business outside the United States. What do you think? What is that? What the reaction will be in the U.S. if it doesn't get its act together?
Well, as someone who has worked at prior startups, it is a burden to meet with every regulator to explain that your product is in compliance. And so what would be helpful would be clarity to resolve the uncertainty. I think that was the worst part of it. Going from regulator to regulator, explaining how our product is in fact in compliance and fully decentralized, but never knowing for sure how they would land because there were no clear laws in this space. So there are definitely pressures for companies to go overseas because it is fairly easy to start a blockchain. These chains can operate globally, and so it's not necessary to be based in the U.S.
All right. Linda, thank you for joining us for Policy Week. That was Crypto Council for Innovation Chief Global Regulatory Officer, Linda Jeng.